My name is Olivia Hill. I'm 52 years old, and I've spent over 20 years in administration for family-run businesses. I'm quiet, professional, and I avoid drama at all costs. I believe in contracts, hard work, and earning respect through results, not politics. That's why what happened at the quarterly meeting shocked me to my core. My sister-in-law, Veronica, stood at the front of the conference room surrounded by executives and department heads. She gestured toward my desk near the back and announced with a bright smile, "Olivia's position is temporary. Don't get too attached to her." Laughter rippled through the room. My stomach twisted. She continued, eyes glinting with satisfaction, "We'll be restructuring soon, so she shouldn't bother decorating that office." More laughter. My face burned with humiliation. The message was clear and deliberate. I didn't belong. I wasn't family. I was disposable. That evening, I drove home in silence, hands gripping the steering wheel. I opened my employment folder for the first time in years. I spread the contract across my kitchen table under harsh fluorescent light. My hands trembled slightly as I reread clauses I'd barely glanced at when I signed years ago. I expected standard employment language. Nothing special, nothing protective. Instead, I found something completely different. Renewal protections. Authority clauses. Severance guarantees that would cost the company significant money. Language about board approval required for termination. My role wasn't temporary at all. It was protected in ways I'd forgotten. Someone had lied about my status. And it wasn't me. I sat back, mind racing through implications. Veronica had announced my temporary position with such confidence, such certainty. She'd made it public, humiliating me in front of colleagues who now saw me as expendable. But she was wrong. Dangerously wrong. I wondered if she'd ever actually read this contract. Based on her smug confidence, I suspected she hadn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying her words, her smirk, the casual cruelty of her announcement. Something inside me shifted from hurt to cold clarity. I thought back to how I'd arrived at this company 7 years ago. The business was in crisis, financial chaos, no systems, vendors threatening lawsuits, employees quitting weekly. My brother, Kenneth, who'd married Veronica 3 years earlier, had begged me to help. Just temporarily, he'd promised. Until we stabilized things. I came in quietly, no fanfare, no executive title. I rebuilt their accounting system from scratch. I negotiated with angry vendors, implemented inventory controls, trained staff who'd never seen proper procedures. I worked 70-hour weeks for months, never complaining, never demanding credit. Slowly, the company stabilized. Profits returned. Operations smoothed out. And I faded into the background while others, especially Veronica, who'd taken a VP title, accepted praise for the turnaround. I wasn't loud. I wasn't flashy. I was useful, efficient, and largely invisible. People forgot I was the reason their paychecks cleared on time. They forgot who'd saved this company from bankruptcy. But the company itself hadn't forgotten. It was far more dependent on me than anyone realized. 2 weeks after that humiliating meeting, our extended family gathered for Kenneth's birthday party at Veronica's meticulously decorated home. I arrived with a gift, preparing to stay briefly before escaping. Veronica cornered me near the kitchen, wine glass in hand, that familiar smirk playing on her lips. "Olivia, darling, you should really start looking for hobbies," she said loudly enough for nearby relatives to hear. "For when this ends. You'll need something to fill your time." Cousins glanced over, curious and pitying. Kenneth stood 10 feet away, heard everything, and said nothing. He just looked uncomfortable and turned away. No one defended me. No one questioned her. The humiliation felt worse than the meeting because this was family. I forced a polite smile and excused myself to the bathroom. Standing there, staring at my reflection, something hardened inside me. I stopped feeling hurt. I stopped feeling defensive. Instead, I started observing. I noticed how Veronica dominated conversations, how she controlled narratives, how she'd positioned herself as indispensable while making me appear temporary. Back at the office, I began noticing patterns I'd previously ignored. Every major financial decision was routed through my desk for approval before implementation. Vendor contracts required my signature for legal validity. The accounting system I'd built was documented in shorthand only I fully understood. Department heads came to me, not Veronica, when they needed actual answers about budgets, compliance, or operational procedures. They called me temporary, yet their entire operation relied on my knowledge daily. During meetings, I stayed quiet and watched. Veronica presented plans. Others nodded. Then afterward, they'd quietly approach my office asking, "Can you actually make this work?" I always did. I made her look competent by doing the invisible work she couldn't. But why were they suddenly rushing to push me out? Then it clicked. Someone had finally told Veronica she couldn't just fire me on a whim. That's why she was creating this temporary narrative, building justification for removing me despite the contract protections. She was preparing the ground for my exit. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't storm into Kenneth's office demanding explanations. Instead, I scheduled a consultation with an employment attorney named Beverly Chen, quietly, professionally, during my lunch break. Her office was downtown, small but organized, walls lined with legal texts. I handed her my contract. Beverly read it once carefully, then read it again more slowly. She looked up, eyebrows raised. "Mrs. Hale, this is an exceptionally strong employment agreement. They can't terminate you without significant cause and board approval." My heart pounded. They're saying I'm temporary. This contract says you're not. Termination would trigger substantial severance obligations, easily 6 figures based on your tenure and salary. Beverly leaned forward. "Do they know what you know?" I blinked. "I'm not sure what you mean. Do they understand their own vulnerability here? Because if they try forcing you out, you have grounds for a lawsuit that could be very expensive for them." I left her office with clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. I wasn't powerless. I'd just been silent. At the next staff meeting, Veronica unveiled organizational charts for upcoming restructuring. She clicked through slides showing new reporting lines, revised departments, strategic realignments. My name appeared nowhere in the future structure. She presented this with theatrical enthusiasm, talking about fresh perspectives and new energy. Her eyes found mine across the room. She smiled like she'd already won. For the first time since this began, I smiled back. Not a polite, nervous smile. A genuine, knowing smile. Her expression flickered with confusion. After the meeting, I returned to my office and began documenting everything. Every email, every approval I'd signed, every decision I'd guided, every system I maintained. I created detailed logs of my daily responsibilities. I backed up files to personal drives. I photographed documents. I built a comprehensive record of exactly how dependent this company was on me. The countdown had begun. But Veronica didn't realize she'd started a timer on her own position, not mine. 3 weeks later, they hired a younger woman named Brianna Foster and introduced her as my administrative support. She was 28, eager, nervous, freshly graduated with a business degree. During her first week, I watched managers dump responsibilities on her without training, expecting immediate results. Veronica gave her complex assignments with impossible deadlines and no guidance. I recognized myself in Brianna, someone capable but being set up to fail so they could justify my departure. "This system is so complicated," Brianna admitted one afternoon, frustrated tears in her eyes. "Nobody explains anything properly." "They won't," I said gently. "But I will." I spent hours teaching her properly, sharing knowledge I'd accumulated over years. Not because I wanted to train my replacement, but because I saw an innocent person being used as a pawn. Veronica assumed I'd be territorial and difficult. Instead, I was helpful and professional. My kindness toward Brianna confused management. But I wasn't protecting the company. I was protecting Brianna from being destroyed by their games, and documenting their failure to properly transition my role. Late one Thursday night, working from home, I received an email that changed everything. The sender was Veronica's assistant, copying me accidentally on an internal thread discussing my exit strategy. I read it twice, hardly believing my luck. The email chain discussed timing my departure, how to minimize severance costs, restructuring my salary into Brianna's lower wage, and most damning, specific language about avoiding legal complications if she pushes back. They'd been planning this for months. Every humiliating comment, every public dismissal, every temporary reference was calculated groundwork. They assumed I'd leave quietly when pushed hard enough. I sat in my home office, rain pattering against windows, and forwarded the entire chain to Beverly. Within an hour, she responded, "This is gold. They've documented their intent to violate your contract. Don't respond to the email. Don't let them know you saw it." We wait. The next morning, I arrived at work exactly on time, greeting everyone pleasantly. Veronica passed me in the hallway. I smiled. She looked puzzled. She had no idea I held dynamite. 2 days later, I formally requested written clarification of my role and employment status. I sent the request through official HR channels, copying the board's secretary per company policy. The response was immediate chaos. HR called me within an hour, voices strained with false cheerfulness, asking why I needed clarification. Management scheduled emergency meetings, whispering in hallways. My brother Kenneth finally called, sounding stressed. "Olivia, why are you making waves?" "I'm just asking for clarity about my job," I said calmly. "That's reasonable, isn't it?" He had no good answer. By afternoon, Veronica's demeanor had shifted completely. The smirk vanished, replaced by cold assessment. She no longer treated me as a joke. She summoned me to her office late that day. The door closed with a soft click. For the first time since this began, she looked uncertain. "Olivia, we need to talk privately," she said, dispensing with pretense. I sat down, hands folded in my lap, and waited. The power dynamic had shifted, and we both felt it. Veronica dropped all pretense of friendliness. She stood behind her desk, arms crossed, face hard. "You should leave quietly, Olivia. For the family's sake. Kenneth doesn't need this stress. Think about what this could do to family relationships." There it was, the threat wrapped in concern. She was betting I'd prioritize peace over principles, that I'd sacrifice my livelihood to avoid conflict. "Brianna is settling in nicely," Veronica continued. "We'll give you a fair reference. You can transition smoothly and maintain dignity. But if you make this difficult, things could get very uncomfortable." She let the implication hang. I'd be painted as difficult, bitter, ungrateful. Family gatherings would be awkward. Kenneth would be caught in the middle. She was counting on my dislike of drama to make me surrender. I met her eyes calmly. "I'm not going anywhere, Veronica." Her jaw tightened. "You're being unreasonable. I'm being contractual. There's a difference." I stood and walked out, leaving her staring after me. My hands shook, but my voice had stayed steady. I'd drawn my line. The retaliation began immediately. Within days, my responsibilities were suddenly reassigned to other managers. Projects I'd overseen for years were transferred without explanation. Meetings disappeared from my calendar without notification. They thought isolation would break me, that sitting in my office with nothing to do would humiliate me into quitting. Instead, I used the time to organize my documentation and prepare my case. I watched emails carefully, noting every reassignment, every exclusion, building evidence of constructive dismissal. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened. Operations began to stall. The reassigned managers quickly realized they didn't actually know how to do what I'd been doing. Financial approvals that I'd handled smoothly became bottlenecked. Vendor relationships I'd maintained for years started souring when new contacts fumbled communications. The company's efficient machinery, which had run smoothly in the background, started developing problems. And everyone noticed. The board started receiving complaints from department heads about delayed decisions and confusion. Small problems multiplied into larger disruptions. All because they'd removed me without understanding what I actually did. By the second week of my isolation, the consequences became impossible to ignore. Invoices went unpaid because managers didn't know the proper approval sequences. A major vendor threatened to suspend service over communication breakdowns. Compliance reports missed deadlines, risking regulatory penalties. Most critically, several financial approvals backed up because legally, only I could authorize them, a detail buried in my contract that management had forgotten. A key supplier called the main office demanding immediate answers about a payment discrepancy. The new manager handling accounts panicked and tried resolving it without proper authority. The supplier escalated to their legal team. Suddenly, the company faced a potential lawsuit over something I would have resolved in 15 minutes. Department heads started whispering questions. Why had Olivia been sidelined? Who authorized removing her from critical processes? Where was the transition plan? The board, which met monthly, started asking uncomfortable questions of senior management. Veronica tried explaining this was part of necessary restructuring. But the board members were business people. They recognized operational chaos when they saw. Kenneth finally confronted me. We met in my office, door closed, his face tight with frustration. You're causing problems, Olivia. The board is asking questions. Vendors are complaining. You need to stop disrupting things. I looked at my brother, really looked at him. When had he become someone who blamed victims instead of fixing problems? Kenneth, I didn't start this. Veronica announced publicly that I was temporary. She's been pushing me out for months. I'm simply asking for contractual clarity. You're making the family look bad. I'm protecting myself. That's not the same thing. He shook his head, frustrated that I wouldn't simply cooperate with my own dismissal. The board scheduled an emergency review of staffing decisions, he said finally. This is getting out of hand. I nodded slowly. Then maybe someone should have thought about that before trying to illegally terminate a protected employee. Kenneth left without another word. The battle lines were drawn, and he'd chosen Veronica's side. That hurt, but I'd expected it. The emergency board review took place in the main conference room on a Tuesday morning. I arrived with Beverly, my employment attorney, walking beside me in a sharp navy suit, briefcase in hand. The board members' faces showed surprise. Kenneth looked furious. Veronica's face drained of color. She hadn't expected me to bring legal representation. This is a family company, Veronica protested. Lawyers aren't necessary for internal discussions. Beverly smiled politely. Mrs. Hale has been subjected to months of hostile treatment and appears to be facing unlawful termination. Legal representation is entirely appropriate. The board chairman, Howard Brennan, an older man who'd known our family for decades, gestured for everyone to sit. Let's proceed professionally. We're here to clarify Mrs. Hale's employment status and address recent operational disruptions. Beverly opened her briefcase and placed my employment contract on the conference table. The document looked official, formal, undeniable. Gentlemen, ladies, Beverly began, I believe we should start by reviewing the actual terms of Mrs. Hale's employment. There seems to be confusion about whether her position is temporary. Veronica shifted uncomfortably. The board members leaned forward. The truth was about to emerge. Beverly guided the board through my contract clause by clause. Protected employment status. Renewable terms subject only to mutual agreement or documented cause. Authority over financial operations explicitly granted by prior board resolution. Termination requiring board vote and minimum 6-month severance calculated on tenure and salary, easily exceeding $200,000. The word temporary appeared nowhere in the document. The illusion Veronica had constructed collapsed systematically. Board members exchanged glances, realizing the legal and financial exposure the company faced. Howard Brennan looked directly at Veronica. Who approved this restructuring that would eliminate Mrs. Hale's position? Veronica cleared her throat. It was part of overall operational improvements recommended by our management team. Which management team? When did they review Mrs. Hale's contract terms? Silence. Who authorized you to publicly announce her position as temporary? More silence. Veronica's carefully built narrative was crumbling. The board was recognizing that someone had acted without proper authority, creating massive liability. Kenneth sat rigid, face pale, realizing his wife had created a legal nightmare. Beverly spoke again, her voice measured and professional. We have documented evidence of systematic efforts to constructively dismiss Mrs. Hale in violation of her contract. Veronica tried shifting blame. She pointed at Kenneth, suggesting he'd authorized the restructuring. Kenneth shook his head, trapped between his wife and the truth. She mentioned consultants who'd recommended staff changes. Beverly calmly produced emails showing Veronica had made decisions independently without board consultation. "We were trying to modernize," Veronica insisted, desperation creeping into her voice. "Olivia's methods are outdated. We need younger perspectives." Howard cut her off. "Mrs. Hale's contract doesn't expire due to age or methodology preferences. It requires cause and due process." Beverly placed more documents on the table. The accidental email chain discussing my exit strategy, memos reassigning my duties, meeting notes where Veronica had directed managers to exclude me. Each piece of evidence contradicted Veronica's claims of innocent restructuring. One board member, Patricia Wells, studied the documents with growing concern. "These emails discuss avoiding legal complications. That suggests awareness of wrongdoing." Veronica's face flushed. "Those were taken out of context." "Then please provide the proper context," Patricia responded coolly. Veronica couldn't. She was caught in her own words. Howard closed the folder in front of him. "I'm calling for a full operational and management audit. Effective immediately." The audit lasted 3 weeks. An external firm reviewed company decisions, management practices, and operational changes from the past year. I continued reporting to work, my duties partially restored as systems continued malfunctioning without my involvement. The audit revealed patterns of mismanagement far beyond my situation. Veronica had authorized expensive vendor contracts without proper approval. She had restructured departments based on personal preferences rather than operational needs. She'd created redundant positions for friends and family while eliminating effective employees who didn't align with her vision. Financial controls had weakened under her oversight. Several decisions bordered on conflicts of interest. Most damning, the audit confirmed that my systematic removal had directly caused recent operational failures. Department heads testified, confidentially, that I was essential to daily operations. The audit report landed on the board's desk like a bomb. Howard scheduled another emergency meeting. This time, Veronica wasn't invited to participate. She was the subject under review. Kenneth was implicated too, not through active wrongdoing, but through passive silence, failing to challenge his wife's decisions even when questionable. The family company was facing its own reckoning. The board met privately, then summoned me. Beverly accompanied me again. Howard spoke formally. "Mrs. Hale, the board apologizes for the treatment you've endured. We're formally reaffirming your employment status, restoring all responsibilities, and expanding your authority to prevent future management overreach." My title changed to Director of Operations. My salary increased significantly. Most importantly, my authority over financial and operational decisions was clarified and strengthened. I reported directly to the board now, not through management hierarchy. The room treated me differently. No more dismissive glances. No more patronizing tones. They'd seen the operational chaos that resulted from sidelining me and recognized my actual value. Patricia Wells approached me after the meeting. "I'm sorry we didn't see this sooner, Olivia. You've been protecting this company for years while others took credit." That afternoon, Veronica was placed on administrative leave pending further board decisions. Her office was cleaned out. Her access to company systems was revoked. Employees whispered in hallways, shocked by the sudden reversal. I felt no triumph, only exhausted relief. I'd fought for my dignity and won. But the cost felt heavy. 3 days later, Veronica appeared at my house after dark. I opened the door to find her standing on my porch without makeup, hair pulled back messily, eyes red from crying. Her usual confidence was completely gone. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I considered refusing but stepped aside, letting her in. We sat in my living room, an uncomfortable silence stretching between us. "I made mistakes," Veronica said finally. "I underestimated you. I thought you were just there, filling space. I didn't realize how much you actually did." I said nothing. "The board is terminating me," she continued. "Kenneth is trying to save my position, but they won't listen. My career is destroyed." She looked at me pleadingly. "Can you talk to them? Tell them to give me another chance? You have influence now." I studied her carefully. Weeks ago, she'd tried humiliating me, pushing me out, threatening to make things uncomfortable if I didn't leave quietly. Now she wanted mercy. Veronica, I didn't create this situation. You did. I simply told the truth. Please, Olivia. For the family. You didn't care about family when you were destroying my livelihood. She fell silent. There was nothing more to say. Veronica's termination was announced internally the following week. The official reasons cited breach of fiduciary duty and management failures creating operational risk. Her name disappeared from company directories. Her email bounced. The family stopped calling me. Kenneth avoided me completely, either embarrassed or angry, probably both. Extended relatives took sides, most quietly supporting Veronica because she was married to Kenneth. Blood relation be damned. Holiday gatherings became awkward affairs I stopped attending. But at work, respect replaced dismissal. Colleagues who'd laughed when Veronica called me temporary now sought my guidance. Vendors who'd been reassigned to other managers requested me specifically. The company stabilized, then thrived. 2 months after Veronica's departure, Howard called me to his office. Olivia, the board wants to offer you a permanent executive position, Chief Operating Officer. Full benefits, equity stake, comprehensive contract. It was everything I'd never asked for but had earned through quiet competence. I sat in his office looking at the formal offer letter, feeling complicated emotions. I'd won. But what exactly had I won? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I asked for a week to consider. That night, I drove to the coast and walked along the beach, watching waves crash against rocks, thinking about what I truly wanted. I'd proven my value. I'd defended my dignity. I'd survived their attempt to erase me. But did I want to stay in a place where I'd had to fight so hard for basic respect? Did I want to build my future in a company that had only recognized my worth after legal intervention threatened their finances? The COO position offered security, power, and vindication. But it also meant remaining entangled with family who'd chosen Veronica over me, working alongside people who'd laughed at my humiliation. Power wasn't the same as peace. Dignity wasn't the same as happiness. I realized I'd been fighting for the principle of being valued, not necessarily for the specific job. Now that I'd proven my point, I could choose what came next. For the first time in years, I had genuine options. I requested one final meeting with the board. I sat across from Howard and the other board members in the familiar conference room where this battle had unfolded. They expected me to accept their offer enthusiastically. Instead, I thanked them sincerely for recognizing my contributions and offering the executive position. Then I respectfully declined. I'm resigning effective in 3 months, I said calmly. I'll stay long enough to properly transition my responsibilities and train my successor, this time with adequate time and resources. Howard looked shocked. Olivia, we're offering you everything you fought for. I fought to be valued and treated fairly. You've done that, and I'm grateful. But I've realized I don't want to stay somewhere I had to fight so hard to be seen. They tried persuading me. Higher salary, better benefits, guaranteed autonomy. But my decision was final. I wanted to leave on my terms, with my dignity intact and my reputation restored. Not bitter. Not defeated. Just finished. I'll honor my contract through the transition period. But then I'm done. We negotiated a generous severance package reflecting my tenure and contributions. I'd leave with full benefits, glowing references, and the satisfaction of knowing I'd stood up for myself successfully. During my 3-month transition, I trained Brianna properly to take over my core responsibilities. She'd survived being used as a pawn and had real potential. I documented every system I'd built, created comprehensive manuals, and introduced her to key vendors personally. This time the company did things right. Meanwhile, I interviewed with other companies. My reputation in the industry was solid. People remembered my work, not the family drama. I received multiple offers and accepted a senior consultant position with a larger firm across the state, bringing my expertise in business operations and crisis management. The new job offered better pay, clear authority, and most importantly, a fresh start where my value was assumed rather than questioned. The family companies struggled after I left. Without my institutional knowledge and vendor relationships, operations developed problems. They hired consultants to fix issues I'd prevented from occurring in the first place. I heard through industry contacts that they were struggling with compliance and operational efficiency. I felt no satisfaction in their difficulties. I'd moved on. My final day arrived. I cleaned out my office, said goodbye to Brianna and a few genuine friends I'd made. No one from family attended my farewell. 3 months after starting my new position, thriving in an environment that valued my expertise from day one, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, then recognized Veronica's area code. The message was brief. "I was wrong about you. I'm sorry." I stared at those words for a long moment. Part of me wanted to respond, to acknowledge her apology, maybe even offer forgiveness. But I realized I didn't need to. Her acknowledgement didn't change what happened or heal the hurt she'd caused. It was closure she needed, not me. I'd already moved forward. I deleted the message without replying, because the truth was simple and didn't require her validation. Veronica had called me temporary, had tried erasing me, had assumed I was powerless and disposable. But it was her power that proved temporary. Her position that was eliminated. Her career that was damaged. I'd been quiet, professional, and underestimated my entire career. That patience hadn't made me weak. It had made me resilient. When pushed too far, I'd stood up calmly but firmly, armed with truth and contracts, and won. Not through drama or revenge, but through documentation and dignity. Now I was exactly where I belonged. Respected, valued, and permanent.